A teacher interviewed 31 pupils to review their progress. Each pupil was allocated 7 minutes. What is the minimum number of half-hour lessons needed to carry out all of the interviews?
In this question, we are told that a teacher interviews 31 pupils and she spends 7 minutes on each interview. And the question asks us what is the minimum number of half-hour slots needed to conduct all the interviews. So what we need to do first is work out the total number of minutes. Well, to do that, we're going to do 31 multiplied by 7. 7 ones are 7, 7 threes are 21 with a 0. So this gives us 217 minutes in total. So now what we need to do is find out how many half-hour slots are in here. So if we have 217, and we're going to divide that by 30. Well, I know that 7 threes are 21, so 7 30s are 210. And if we deduct these from each other, we're left with 7. So in total, we have 7 30-minute slots, remainder 7 minutes. So in other words, we need a minimum of 8 half-hour slots.
3 55-seater coaches are booked for a school trip. 5 classes of 26 pupils, 5 teachers and 8 parents are all booked in on the trip. How many more pupils could go on the trip?
In this question, we are given that there are 3 55-seater coaches and there are 5 classes of 26 pupils, 5 teachers and 8 parents booked in for the trip. And the question asks us how many more pupils could go on the trip. So let's first work out how many spaces there are on the coaches. So we're going to do 3 multiplied by 55. 3 times 5 is 15, 3 times 5 again is 15 with a 0, and this becomes 165. So we have 165 spaces. But now we've got 5 classes of 26 pupils, so we need to do 5 multiplied by 26 to see how many pupils are on the trip. And remember, if we multiply a number by 5, that is the same as multiplying it by 10 first, and then dividing the answer by 2. So 26 times 10 is 260, divided by 2 is 130. So that's 130. And then on top of that, we need to add on the 5 teachers and the 8 parents. And when we do that, we get 143. So we have 165 spaces, but only 143 are occupied. So we're just going to take these away from each other. 5 minus 3 is 2, 6 minus 4 is 2, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So the answer is 22 spaces.
A school's end of Key Stage 3 English test results for a class of 25 pupils showed that 22 pupils achieved level 4 and above. What percentage was this?
In this question, we are told that 22 out of the 25 people in a class got a level 4 or above. And the question asks us what percentage is this. So we have 22 out of a total of 25. So what we could do is do 22 divided by 25 and multiply our answer by 100, but there is a quick way here. Notice how the denominator is a 25, and we know that 4 times 25 is 100. So let's multiply the top and bottom of this fraction by 4. And remember, if we divide or multiply the top and the bottom by the same thing, we don't change the fraction. So 25 multiplied by 4 gives us 100, and 22 multiplied by 4 gives us 88. Remember that multiplying by 4 is the same as multiplying by 2 twice. So we get 22 times 2 is 44, times 2 again gives us 88. And now you see we have 88 out of 100. But percentages are always out of 100. So this is 88%, and that's the answer.
100 pupils correctly completed a sponsored spelling test of 45 words. Each pupil was sponsored at 5 pence per word. How much money did the pupils raise in total?
In this question we are told that 100 pupils successfully completed a spelling test of 45 words, and they each got sponsored 5 pence per word. And the question asks us, how much money did they raise in total? Well, let's have a look at it this way. So, There are 45 words in each test, and you get sponsored at 5p per word. So we can do 45 multiplied by 5. And remember, multiplying by 5 is the same as multiplying by 10, 450, and dividing by 2, 225. In pounds, that's obviously going to give us £2.25. And now we just need to multiply this by 100, as there are 100 pupils. So the answer is £225.
What is 0.02 multiplied by 15? Give your answer as a decimal.
In this question, we are asked to evaluate 0.2 multiplied by 15. Now, the way I like to do these questions is to forget the decimal point. So I actually like to do the calculation 2 times 15, which is 30. And then I like to say, well, how have I got from this line to this line? Well, you can see I have multiplied 0.2 by 10 to get this answer. So to undo that process, we have to divide this answer by 10. So the answer is 3.
In a group of pupils, 87.5% passed a GCSE examination. What fraction did not pass? Give your answer in its lowest terms.
In this question, we are told that 87.5% of the pupils passed a GCSE examination, and the question asks us to find the fraction of the pupils that did not pass the exam. And it asks us, of course, to give our answer in its lowest terms. Well, remember that percentages are always out of 100. So if 87.5% pass the test, then 100 minus 87.5, which will give us 12.5, did not pass the test. So we need to work out 12.5% as a fraction, and this is one we recommend you should know off the top of your head, is 1/8. Okay? Now if you didn't know that, what we could do is say, well, 12.5% is 12.5 out of 100, because percentages are always out of 100, okay? And we're not really allowed decimal points with fractions, so what we're going to do is we're going to multiply top and bottom by 10 to remove that decimal point, and this will give us 125 over 1,000. And now notice if a number ends in a 0 or a 5, then it's always divisible by 5, so we can divide the top and divide the bottom by 5. And remember, to divide by 5, that's the same as multiplying by 2 and divided by 10. So 125 divided by 5 is 125 times 2, 250, divided by 10, which is 25. And we're going to get 1,000 divided by 5 is 200. And again, we've got a 5 and a 0, we can divide the top and bottom by 5, so we're going to get 5 over 40, and again we can divide by 5, so we're going to get an 1/8, because 5 divided by 5 is 1, 40 divided by 5 is 8. So the answer is 1/8. However, we would strongly recommend that you learn this one, commit this one to memory.
Pupils spent 25 hours in lessons each week. 6 hours per week were allocated to English. What percentage of lesson time per week was spent on other subjects?
In this question, we are told that pupils spend 25 hours per week in lessons, and we are told that they spend 6 of those hours on English, and the question asks us what percentage of the time is spent on other subjects. Well, let's have a look. They spend 6 out of 25 hours on English. And notice that the denominator here is a 25, so the quick way to get this into a percentage format is to multiply the top and bottom by 4. So this is going to give us 6 times 4, which is 24, and 25 times 4, which is 100. And we get 24 out of 100, which is 24%. But the question asks us what percentage of the time is spent on other subjects. Well, if they spend 24% of the time on English, then they spend 100 minus 24, which is equal to 76% of the time on other subjects. So that is the answer.
4/5 of a group of 165 pupils took part in voluntary work. How many pupils was this?
In this question we are told that 4/5 of 165 pupils took part in voluntary work. And the question asks us how many pupils was this? So all we need to do is 4/5 multiplied by 165. So we can either do 165 multiplied by 4 and divide the answer by 5, or we can do 165 divided by 5 first, and then multiply our answer by 4. And that's the way I'm going to do it because I think it's just a little bit nicer. So we are going to do 165 divided by 5. Remember that dividing by 5 is the same as multiplying by 2 and dividing by 10. So if we multiply this by 2, we get 330, and if we divide it by 10, we get 33. So we now need to do 33 multiplied by 4. Well, remember that multiplying by 4 is the same as multiplying by 2 twice. So if we multiply 33 by 2, we get 66. And if we multiply this by 2 again, we're going to get 132. And so that is our answer.
A teacher completed a claim form for the number of miles travelled to and from 6 ICT training sessions. The journey one way was 17.5 miles. What was the total number of miles claimed?
Here we are told that a teacher submitted a claim form for the number of miles to and from 6 ICT training sessions. We are given that the one-way journey is 17.5 miles, and the question asks us to find the total number of miles claimed. Well, if the one-way journey is 17.5 miles, then the return journey is double this, which will give us 35 miles. But that's for one ICT session. She attends 6, so we now need to do 35 multiplied by 6. So 6 5s are going to give me 30, and 6 3s are going to give me 18 with a 0. Adding these together is going to give me 210. So she claims for 210 miles.
A pupil scored 73% in a test. In a later test, the pupil scored 18 out of 24. What was the difference between the percentage scores obtained by the pupil in the two tests?
In this question, we are told that the pupil got 73% on his first test. He then got 18 out of 24 on his second test. And the question asks us to find the difference in the percentage marks between the two tests. So what we need to do is work out what this is as a percentage. Well, we can start by reducing the fraction. I mean, we could jump in straight away and do 18 divided by 24 using short division, but this might take a little longer than needed. So let's reduce the fraction. Notice how 18 and 24 are both multiples of 6. So we can divide the top and the bottom by 6. And that is going to give us a 3 on the top and a 4 on the bottom. So he got 3/4 of the marks correct, which is of course 0.75, which is 75%. So we can see the difference between 75 and 73 is 2, and that is the answer. Now if you didn't remember that 3/4 is 0.75, we just have to remember that this represents 3 divided by 4. And if we divide by 4, that's the same as dividing by 2 twice. So 3/4 is obviously the same as 1.5 divided by 2, dividing both sides by 2, which is the same as 0.75, because 1.5 divided by 2 is 0.75.
A minibus travelled 100 miles and used 0.25 litres of fuel per mile. Fuel costs 88 pence per litre. What was the cost of the journey?
In this question we are told that a minibus travels 100 miles. It uses 0.25 litres of fuel per mile, and the fuel cost is 88 pence per litre. So if the minibus uses 0.25 litres of fuel per mile, then for the 100-mile journey, it obviously uses 100 times 0.25, which is 25 litres of fuel. And now we just need to work out the cost. So we're going to do 88 multiplied by 25. Now we could do this in a grid, but there is a quick way. Whenever you see a multiplication involving a 25 and a multiple of 4, I would always recommend splitting this up into a multiple of 4. So we know that 88 is 4 times 22. Okay? So it seems a little bit strange that I've done this, but there's good reason for it, because we know that 4 multiplied by 25 is 100. So this is the same as 100 multiplied by 22, which is 2200. Now we have to remember this is the answer in pence, so the answer in pounds is going to be £22.
A test takes 1 hour 30 minutes. A pupil is allowed 10% extra time. The test starts at 13:30. At what time must the pupil finish the test? Give your answer using the 24-hour clock.
In this question, we are given that a test takes 1 hour and 30 minutes. We are told that one pupil is allowed 10% extra time. We are given that the test starts at 13:30, and we are asked to find the time that it finishes. Well, what we need to do first is to work out this time in minutes. So 1 hour 30 minutes is the same as 60 plus 30, which is 90 minutes. Now 10% of 90 minutes is 9 minutes, so the student gets an extra 9 minutes. So they get 99 minutes. So the student gets an extra 9 minutes. So instead of 1 hour 30 minutes, they get 1 hour 39 minutes. So all we need to do is add 1 hour 39 onto 13:30. Well, 1 hour 30 is going to take us up to 1500. With the extra 9 takes us to 1509. And that is the answer. In this question we are given a box and whisker diagram, and we are asked to click on the label for the test in which 3/4 of the class achieved 55% or more. Well, if we recap with box and whisker plots, that we have the lowest mark, the lower quartile, the median, the upper quartile, and the highest mark. And each of these split the data into 4 pieces, 4 quarters. So we expect 25% to get between the lowest mark and the lower quartile, another 25% to get between the lower quartile and the median, 25% to get between the median and the upper quartile, and the final 25% to get between the upper quartile and the highest mark. So the question is asking for us to click on the label for the test in which 3/4 of the class achieved 55% or more. So if we need 3/4 of the class to achieve 55% or more, that's the same as 75% of the class achieving 55 or more. So we need to find a box and whisker plot like this, where the lower quartile is 55, because then, as you can see, 25, 50, 75% got above that mark. So let's have a look on the diagram. We can see that the steps, the intervals here between the grades are 2. So 55 is exactly here, and we can see that conveniently intersects the lower quartile of test 4. So we can see that the answer to this question is test 4. In this question we are told that the teacher expects the trend of improvement in the median percentage mark to continue in a 5th test. And the question asks us, what median percentage mark does he expect in test 5? Well, in this question we just need to have a look how the median changes between each test. So if we look at test 1, we can see the median here is 56, in test 2, 58, in test 3, 60, and in test 4, 62. So we can see we have a sequence here, 56, 58, 60, 62. In fact, we're adding 2 on each time, so we can see straight away that the median mark should be 64. In this question, we are asked to indicate all the true statements. Now, the first statement claims that test 1 had the smallest range of marks. Now remember that the range is defined to be the difference between the highest and lowest value. So it is this distance here. Okay? Now we can see in test 2 and 3 that distance is much, much higher, just by inspection. So it looks to be a close call between test 1 and test 4. So let's actually work out the range. Well, the range in test 1 is as follows. We have the highest mark as 72, and the lowest mark is going to be 4. So the highest mark is going to be 72, and the lowest mark is going to be 44. So that is a difference of 28. Now if we have a look at test 4, we can see the highest mark was 75, and the lowest mark was 46. So we can see that the range here is 29. So this statement is indeed true, because test 1 had the smallest range of marks. Let's have a look at the second statement. So this claims that the highest mark was achieved in test 2. Now remember, the highest mark is always represented by the highest point on the box and whisker diagram. So for test 2, the highest mark we can see was 76. And look, it's way higher than all of the other tests, so we know that also this statement is true. Let's have a look at the last part now. So this said that in test 4 the lowest mark was 44. Well, we've already had a look at this before. The lowest mark in test 4 here is actually 46, so that statement is false. In this question we are asked to find out how much money was raised for charity. Now we are told that the play ran for 2 nights and 250 tickets were printed for each night. So there's a total of 500 tickets that were printed. Now we are also told that the tickets were sold for £1.50 each, but we can see from the table there was a cost associated. There was a 10p per ticket cost. So the actual profit they made from the tickets was £1.40. So the first calculation we need to do is 500 times 1.4. And we get £700. So that's how much profit was raised just from the ticket sales. But we are also told that all the 500 cans of drink were sold. And they were sold at 40p each. However, there was a cost. We can see again from the table there's a 30p cost per can. So the actual profit per can is 10p. So we need to do 500 multiplied by 0.1, which gives us 50. Adding these up, we can get £750, but we have to remember there are 2 other costs that we need to cover, 2 fixed costs. Stage props at £50 and costumes at £60. So we need to deduct from this £50 for the stage props and £60 for the costumes, and if we do that we will get the answer £640. In this question we are told that the walk is to cover a distance of 9 kilometres. 2 rest breaks of 20 minutes each need to be included, and it was estimated that the pupils would cover an average of 4 kilometres per hour, and they need to reach their destination by 3 p.m. So, using this information, the question asks what is the latest time the pupils should set out to arrive by 3 p.m. Well, if there are 2 20-minute breaks, then that's 40 minutes we need to account for. And if they're walking at a speed of 4 kilometres in 1 hour, then that means they walk 1 kilometre in 1/4 of an hour, and then they walk 9 kilometres in 9/4 hours, which equals 9/4 times 60, which is 135 minutes. Okay? Plus this additional 40 minutes here, that means it takes a total time of 175 minutes, which is 120 minutes plus 55 minutes, so that is 2 hours, 55 minutes. So now all we need to do is to take away that time from 1500, okay? And when we do this, we will end up with 12:05. So the answer is 12:05. In this question, we are asked to find the proportion of the class that can speak 4 languages. Now, if we look to the pie chart here, we can see that it is the yellow sector that represents students who can speak 4 languages. And we can see that there are exactly 3 pupils, out of a maximum of 29. We can see here that there's 29. So the proportion is 3 out of 29. Now, as this is on the written section, we can use a calculator to work this out. So we're going to type in 3 divided by 29 on our calculator, and that will give you 0.10344 ... Now it wants our answer rounded to 1 decimal place. So this means that the answer is going to be 0.1. In this question, we are given 2 way tables and we are asked to indicate all the true statements. The first one claims that half of the pupils taking geography achieved grades B or C in mathematics. Well, we can see from the geography table here that there are a total of 98 pupils. So half of 98 gives us 49. So we just need to read where it says GCSE mathematics here, scroll all the way along from B to C, and we can see that the total is 49. So this statement is true. The next statement claims that more than 3/4 of the pupils taking history achieved a grade E and above in history. Well, we can see from the history table here that there are a total of 52 pupils that got a grade E or above in history. So we first need to work out what 3/4 of 52 is. And if we do that calculation, we will get that this is equal to 39. So we need to check that more than 39 pupils achieved a grade E and above in history. Well, let's have a look at the history table. If they got an E or above, that means they got either an A star, an A, a B, a C, a D, or an E. So we just need to add up these 3 totals here. So we need to do 5 plus 22 plus 14. And when we do that, we get 41. So we can see that this statement is also true. Finally, let's have a look at the last statement. This claims that less than 10% of the pupils taking geography achieved an A star or A in geography. Well, there are 98 pupils that took geography, so 10% of 98 is 9.8. So we need less than 9.8 pupils who took geography to achieve an A star or A. In other words, 9 or less. Well, we can see from the table here that 13 students got an A star or A in geography, so that statement. In this question, we are asked to click on the letter for pupils who showed an improvement of more than 6 months in the difference between actual age and reading age over the period March to June 2011. So you can see in the table, we're given the difference between the actual age and reading age in this plus or minus months column. So what we need to do is look at the difference in the plus or minus column in March, and have a look at the difference in the plus and minus column in June. And we have to deduct these from each other and see whether the difference is bigger than 6, because that means the improvement is greater than 6. Okay, let's have a look at pupil A. So we can see that initially they had a difference of 6 months, and now they have a difference of 13 months. So we're just going to deduct these from each other, and we can see that the difference is 13 minus 6, which is 7, which is bigger than 6. So we're going to mark down pupil A. Let's have a look at B. So this has gone from 17 to 13. That's only a difference of 4, so we do not include them. Pupil C has gone from 8 to 5, so that's a negative difference. They've got worse. Pupil D has gone all the way from -4 to -1, so that's a climb of 3. Pupil E has gone from 18 to 25, so that's a gap of 7, so we need to include pupil E. Pupil F has gone all the way from -5 to +2, that's also a difference of 7, so we're going to include F. And G has gone from 17 to 24, so that is a difference of 7 as well. Let's have a look at H. So H was at 13 and is now at 11, so that's a negative difference. I was at -9 and is now at -3, so that's a difference of exactly 6, but it's not more than 6, so we do not include them. J has gone from 19 to 18, so that's a drop of 1. And K has gone from 0 to 10, so that's an improvement of 10. So the answer to this question is A, E, F, G, and K. In this question we are given two tables and we are asked to drag and drop the correct values into the boxes to complete the tables. So let's have a look at this first table here. We can see the box here that's missing is the mathematics E to G grades. Well, we can see that at the very bottom here it gives us the total, so we know there are 234 pupils in total. And we know 0 pupils got less than a G, we know that 84 got between a C and a D, and 76 got between an A star and a B. So what we can do is actually deduct 76 and 84 from 234, and that will give us this number here. So the calculation that we're going to need to do is 234, and then we need to take away 76 and take away 84. Of course we need to take away 0 as well, but that's not going to affect our answer. And that gives us 74. So we can see already that the solution for this one goes here. Okay. Let's now move on to table 2. So we can see here this is percentage grades, and it's a little annoying because we have A star to B, but then we have A star to D, then A star to G. So the line above includes the line from before, so we can't just do a subtraction here. We're going to have to work out these percentages. Well, let's have a look at A star to D. We can see from the table here for English that there are exactly 78 plus 96, which is 174 pupils who got between an A star and a D. But that's out of a total of 234, so we need to do 174 divided by 234, and that gives us 0.7435 ... But as a percentage, this is obviously 74%. So again, we can see that in here we should have 74%. Finally, we need to do the same for science. We can see that 64 people and 98 pupils got obviously between an A star and a D. So combined, that gives us 162 pupils. So that's 162 pupils out of 234, and when we do this in our calculator we get 0.6923 ... which is of course 69%. And so we have that this box should be dragged here. Okay, in this question we are given a cumulative frequency graph and we are asked what percentage of pupils was predicted to achieve a grade C and above. Well, we can see from the key here that the pink colour relates to actual grade and the blue line represents predicted grade. Now the question asks us what percentage of pupils was predicted to achieve a grade C and above. Well, remember, cumulative frequency diagrams do not tell us that. They tell us how many people got that grade or below. So we could find from the graph C and below, but this isn't what we're after. So we need to think about this a little logically. We want to find how many people want to C and above. Well, the opposite of that is a D or below. And we can read that off from the graph, because if you got a C and above, then you couldn't have got a D or below. And if we have a look, D and below, we can see from the graph here that this reads off at 60. So we know 60 people got a D or below. And now we just need to find the total amount of people. Well, we can see that the line reaches its highest point here at 100. So there are 100 pupils. If 60 got a D or below, that means that 100 minus 60, which is 40 pupils, got a C or above. In this question we are given a scatter graph and we are asked to click on the correct letter for the school which had the same result in both years. Well, the way we need to do this is we need to look for the point that has the exact same y coordinate as it does x coordinate. And the way we can do this easily is by thinking about the y equals x line, because that represents all the marks that are the same. So imagine I could draw this line in my head, we would be able to see that it's obviously G. Now the problem is you won't be able to do that. So the way I would do this is I would think about each of these larger squares here. And I go through each of those in my head, so there's none in here, none in that square. And then when we get to this square, I'd look to see, is there anything that roughly intersects that line, okay? And I'd be drawing that in my head, and we can see J's quite close. So I'd have a look at J and I'd say, no, and it's not the same in both. And then we go to this one, and we say again, well, in our head the line's about there, so E and G look like pretty good matches. Let's check G. Well, we can see that they had 34 here, and 34 there. So the correct answer for this question is G. In this question we are told that a science teacher taught 3 classes, each of which carried out an experiment involving the reaction of an acid with a metal. We are told that each class had 28 pupils, and for each experiment the pupils worked in pairs using 10 centimetre cubed of acid. We're also given that each pair repeated the experiment once to check the results, and the question asks us what was the minimum number of cubic centimetres of the acid the teacher needed from the laboratory technician for the 3 classes. So we have to be a little bit careful here as there's a lot of information. Let's have a look first. So there are 28 pupils, but the pupils worked in pairs, so that gives us 28 divided by 2, 14 pairs. Now we would think each pair used 10 centimetres of acid, 10 cubic centimetres of acid, but we are given that each pair repeated the experiment once. So each of those 14 pairs uses 20 centimetre cubed of acid. So we need to do 14 multiplied by 20, which gives us 280 centimetres cubed. Now that's for one class. We actually have 3 classes. So the calculation we need to do is 280 multiplied by 3, which gives us 840 centimetre cubed, and that is the answer. Okay, so in this question we are told that as part of a research project, a teacher compared the point scores achieved by pupils in a school's end of Key Stage 2 mathematics tests, and we are asked to drag and drop the correct values to complete the table. So we can see here we are missing a value here, and this represents the difference between the boys' and girls' mean mathematics point score in 2010. So what we need to do here is just work out the difference between these two values. So we need to do 24.8 minus 23.2, and that gives us 1.6. Okay? So what we then need to do is we need to drag 1.6 to this box here. The good thing about these tables is that we can check that our method is correct, and the way we can do this is we can look at 2009 and we can subtract those two values there, so 24.3 minus 22.5, and we can check that it does indeed equal 1.8, and we can do the same with 2011, work out the difference between 25.1 and 24.9 and check that that equals 0.2, which it does. So that's how you know that you're on the right lines. Finally, we've got this box to consider the mean difference for the 3-year period 2009 to 2011. Well, we now have 3 means. We have 1.8, we have 1.6, and we have 0.2. And all we need to do to work out the mean is add all these together and divide by 3. So if we add those together, we are left with 3.6. And then if we divide that by 3, so we get 3.6 divided by 3, we're left with 1.2. And so that is the answer for this. In this question we are asked to find the difference between the total money charged to the pupils and the total cost of the trip. We are told that there was a £2.50 entry fee to the museum for each pupil. We are given that there are 15 pupils on the trip. The minibus costs 30p per mile, and we are also given that the minibus mileometer reads 33,896 miles before the trip and 34,016 miles after the trip. And finally, we are given that each pupil paid £5 to go on the trip. So what we first need to do is to work out the total money charged. Well, if each pupil paid £5 and there were 15 pupils, the calculation we need to do is 5 times 15, which gives us 75. So they raised £75, but now we need to look at the costs. Well, if the mileage after the trip was 34,016, and it was 33,896 beforehand, that means they travelled total mileage of 34,016 minus 33,896, which is 120. But of course, there is a cost of 30 pence per mile, so we need to do 120 multiplied by 30, which gives us 3,600 pence, in other words, £36. And finally, there is a cost for the entrance fee, that's £2.50 per person. So we're going to do 2.5 multiplied by 15, which is 37.5. So the mileage costs were £36, and the entrance costs were £37.50. So altogether, the total profit would be 75 minus 36 minus 37.5, which is positive 1.5. So the answer is there was a surplus of £1.50. In this question we are asked to indicate all the true statements, and we are given a conversion graph that shows the predicted A-level grades for chemistry. The first statement claims that pupil J and pupil K were predicted to achieve the same grade for A-level chemistry. Well, let's have a look. Pupil J got a mean GCSE point score of 6.2, and pupil K got a mean GCSE point score of 6.4. Now, if we look at the conversion chart, we can see that 6.2 lies between 5.9 and 6.5, so they were predicted a grade D. And pupil K at 6.4 again lies in the range between 5.9 and 6.5, so they also were predicted a grade D. So this statement is true. Now let's have a look at the next statement. This claims that 1/3 of the pupils in the group were predicted to achieve a grade C and above. Now we already know that this is false because there are 8 pupils and 8 divided by 3 does not divide into a nice integer value. However, let's work out what the real fraction would be. Well, in order to get a grade C and above, we can see from the chart that this means you would need a mark of 6.5 or above. So let's have a look how many people have a mark of 6.5 or above. Well, F is 6.6, G is 7.8, and that is it. So we have a total of 2 out of 8, which reduces to 1 out of 4. So the real fraction is a quarter. Finally, let's look at the last statement. This claims that the mode of the predicted grades for the group of pupils is grade D. Well, for this we're going to have to work out what grade each pupil was predicted and then see what the most common grade was. So we can see that pupil F had a mean GCSE point score of 6.6. That equates to, using the chart, a grade C. Likewise, we can see that pupil G was predicted an A, pupil H an E, pupil I a D, J a D, K a D, L was predicted an N, and M was predicted a grade E. And we can see from the list that the most common grade was a grade D, and this means that this statement is true. In this question we are given a chart that shows the grading of lessons in a large primary school, following an inspection in which 20 lessons for each year group were graded. And the question asks us to indicate all the true statements. The first statement claims that the reception year had 2 fewer lessons graded unsatisfactory or poor than year 2. Well, if we have a look at the reception class, we can see from the key here that unsatisfactory and poor is shaded grey, so we have 5% there, and in year 2 we have 10%. So the calculations we need to do is, well, we obviously need to work out 10% of 20, which is 2, and 5% of 20, which is 1, and work out the difference between those numbers. Clearly 2 minus 1 is 1, so this statement is false. The second statement claims that in year 3, 7 lessons were graded as good, very good. So looking at the key, we can see we're looking for the blue chart here, and in year 3 we can see that this is for 35%, so we just need to work out 35% of 20. Using our calculator we can do this by doing 0.35 multiplied by 20, which gives us 7. So this statement therefore is true. Finally, we can have a look at the last statement. This claims that the ratio of good to very good compared to unsatisfactory poor in year 6 was 5 to 1. Well, we can see in year 6 it's 45% against 5%, so the ratio is 45 to 5, but obviously both sides are multiples of 5, so we can divide both sides of the ratio by 5 to get 9 to 1, which is not 5 to 1, so that statement is false.